You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans, America's largest mortgage lender. Spring will be here soon, so if buying a new home is on your to-do list, right now is the time to call Quicken Loans. Learn about which mortgage options make sense for you and get a jump on your competition. With our exclusive Rate Shield approval, the low rate you lock today is protected for up to 90 days while you shop for your new home. With a Rate Shield approval, if rates go up, your low rate stays locked. But if rates go down, you get that new, even lower rate. Either way, you win. Talk to us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com to take advantage. Here's another great reason to work with us. For a record 9 years in a row, J.D. Power has ranked Quicken Loans highest in the nation in customer satisfaction for primary mortgage origination. Again, to lock in today's low mortgage interest rate and get the security of our exclusive Rate Shield approval, call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
For J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com. Rate Shield approval only valid on certain 30-year fixed-rate loans. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Hi, welcome to this Subway ad for the new Sesame Ginger Glazed Chicken Signature Wrap. How would you like it?
I'll take a...
Sports announcer at home?
Yeah, how'd you...
We just know.
My wife picks up the new Signature Wrap. It's got double the rotisserie-style chicken mixed with a sesame ginger glaze. She appears annoyed at me, but she shrugs it off. Those sweet and savory flavors are calling her name. She lifts the wrap and she takes the bite! Incredible! And now she's closing the door on my... Subway, make it what you want.
Limited time only at participating restaurants. Double meat based on average 6-inch sub.
I'm little teapot, short and stout.
Here is my handle and here is my spout.
No, Dad, like this. When I get all steamed up, then I shout, tip me over and pour me out.
This is WWE superstar Roman Reigns. It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
Visit fatherhood.gov, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
It's the refreshingly non-political podcast about everything else.
I'm Alan Ray, and I do this for free. Yes, I do.
It doesn't have to be like this.
Welcome to the non-political Friday evening. It is your humble host, Alan Ray. It's a refreshingly non-political podcast about everything else, and I do this for free, not a dime paid. Great show coming up for you today. We have our special guest, Heather Couchenour, returning. She has done this every year since I've started this podcast. And wow, I think we're going on 3 years now. This is kind of crazy. Don't go anywhere. Great show coming up. You're just not going to want to miss this. This one's a special one. It's World Autism Day, and we're going to celebrate it. As I said before the music kicked in, it is World Autism Awareness Day. It's the 14th annual World Autism Awareness Day today. And the international community, hundreds of thousands of landmarks, buildings, homes, and communities around the world come together today on Autism Awareness Day to light it up blue in recognition of people with autism and those who love and support them. Autism is a lot of times a misunderstood phenomenon, misunderstood complication. And as you're going to hear in this interview with Heather Couchenour, a good friend of mine who has been working with autistic patients for years now, and she does wonderful work, and she is going to clear up some misconceptions. And I caught up with her again, got her on the show, and without further ado, we're going to go right to the interview with Heather. Heather, how you doing today?
I'm good. And yourself?
Not too bad. Hey, third time on I Do This for Free. Welcome back to the show. Can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself real quick, just in case somebody hasn't heard you on here before or wants their memory refreshed a little bit?
Sure. So my name, like Alan said, my name is Heather. Third time on the show. I'm a board-certified behavior analyst, currently practicing in Florida, South Carolina, and Maryland. I work with a wide variety of individuals, people who have autism, as well as people who have developmental delays, behavioral disorders, sometimes emotional disorders, oppositional defiant disorders. Runs the gamut. Basically practice with anyone from birth all the way through the lifespan, and can be private pay, medically based services through health insurance, and have done some educational consulting.
All right. Well, it's been almost exactly a year since you were on this show last time. Basically, this is an annual thing with us now. I mean, it was exactly a year before that, when the first time you were on the show.
I know. It's kind of getting to be our anniversary date, if you will.
That's fine. That's fine. That's a good thing. I just wanted to give a little background here. It is World Autism Awareness Day, and this is actually deemed, isn't this actually also World or Autism Awareness Month, the month of April?
Yeah, and there's also a movement within the community to talk about less about the label and more about neurodiversity, and understanding that everyone is different, and that we're, especially within the adult autism community, because they don't necessarily, similar, if you will, to the deaf community, see it as a disability, but also as its own culture. And it's been kind of a forward-thinking change in how they want to be perceived and acknowledged within our community. And so there is a little bit of backlash against this being labeled the way it is. Not that they dismiss the idea that there's need to help improve some of their skill sets, but it's just an interesting conversation and something to be aware of and to look into. Okay.
I guess we just got to back up a step here. Last year at this time, we were talking about how difficult and a lot of the changes coming about because of the obvious, the pandemic and everything being locked down, and your job taking on an entirely different approach, having to do things through technology, which probably wasn't the most optimal way to do it. How is this, and has this brought about changes that you see that may be good changes, dealing with more people on a broader base now that we've had a year to kind of refine this technology? And a lot good comes out of bad. We know that. But is there things that are arising over the past year that you're finding is a better way to treat, especially maybe adults with autism, Asperger's syndrome, something like that? Are you finding better ways to go through this, maybe that we can use going into the future?
I think that one of the things I've really liked about using technology and using telehealth is that you really do get a better bird's eye view for some families and even with some adults, because they tend to forget after a while, especially if you turn your camera off and you're only observing them, that you're there. So you get less reactivity. So sometimes you get a truer picture of what is going on in each setting, and it's less intrusive. So that's been an exciting tool to use. It's also been helpful to network and collaborate with other professionals, since we all have spent various times at home or in remote settings, by using like Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts or Meets, as well as Doxy, GoToMeeting, and Zoom, and getting everybody together, where sometimes in the past, since people were so busy previously, trying to get everybody in the same room or in the same conference call would take 3 to 4 weeks of emails back and forth. And now some of those processes are streamlined.
Yeah, and I find, the business end of this, I find it actually kind of interesting because when I went back to school, finished my bachelor's degree, they were big, and this has been 13 years now, they were big on the future of business is going to be teleconferencing. And, and they had thousands and thousands of dollars of equipment set up to do what we now do on Zoom and Skype and things like that. I find it kind of interesting that we have actually headed that way. I can actually use my knowledge base, even though, as you know, just trying to connect with you, sometimes it fails miserably.
All good.
But yeah, so back to the subject of autism, and we know that the stats are sobering, and I don't know if you've got the stats on top of your head, but just give me a picture of what kind of scope are we dealing with when we're talking about autism among children and adults?
Sure. So the last time we spoke, I believe it was like 1 in 58 or 1 in 68, and the incident rate is still on the rise. There's definitely higher numbers in different parts of the country. There's a lot of guesses as to why. There's some people who feel it's related to, vaccines. There's some people who feel like it's related to environmental, cluster dump sites where there's been contamination. And the severity, as far as it's more likely to occur in boys than girls. If girls have it, they're more severely affected. There's also, in more cases I've seen in the last 5 years, could be just we're getting better at diagnosing it, but there's also a lot more comorbidities, meaning that there's other things that are being identified with autism, including like oppositional defiant disorder, ADHD, attention hyperactivity disorder, attention deficit disorder, and intellectual disability. So it's picking up more traction and being looked at in addition to other things that could be occurring with it in a broader scope than I've seen it.
That's interesting. And it sounds to me like they're hinting at maybe some of autism cases has to do with pre-existing conditions in the person already, and it's just exasperating the problem, or vice versa. The autism's, there's something going on that's bringing about more problems. And when you identify autism, it opens up a door.
I think there's a couple things. I think depending upon the region and even the culture, as well as, like you were saying, pre-existing conditions influences kind of the diagnosis. For example, autism still is a behavioral diagnosis. It's not like a blood disorder. You can't go get a test and go, oh, I have autism.
Right.
But at the same time, there are more services designated and more treatments designated from a medical and educational perspective with that label. And there are some stats that show that certain segments of the population will be diagnosed at a higher level for autism, in addition to co-occurring disorders, so that they get more intensity of services. And sometimes the label drives the services, so sometimes it's a little sketchy, is what I'm alluding to.
Yeah. Anytime you deal with something with the brain at all, you're really on mostly uncharted territories. There's so much about the brain, neural processes, things like that we really don't understand. And I use this example all the time, from the time that I started my first psychology class, going for my associate's degree, till the time I graduated. One of the last classes I had was, brain development. A lot of things had changed just in that 3 short years, and that's 13 years ago, like I said, you know that we're still developing. We're still trying to figure out what's going on. Now, as far as, and I guess this is just me not really knowing, but also for the sake of our audience, autism, is it something you're born with, something that can develop over time, or is it both, a combination?
That's a great question. There's a lot of debate in the field or in the area about that very question. Again, it would go back to, there is a genetic predisposition that if somebody in your family's had it, you're more likely to develop symptoms, behavioral symptoms for autism. There are documented cases of, fetuses or young infants in the womb that have had a stroke that come out with symptoms and have been diagnosed with autism. There are kids who are completely fine for a number of years, except into maybe 18 months, 24 months, or even 36 months, and they end up getting diagnosed because they lose skills, but they had them. So that's why I'm hesitant to, give a really concise answer, because it as they say, autism is, it is a spectrum, and each case is so different. I've had kids also get diagnosed where they slip through the cracks for a number of years, and they're just like, oh, they're just awkward, they're just different, and then it's like they can't remediate or they're not changing, and they realize, oh, they do have, some type of social cognitive disorder, and let's label them autistic. That's how I would answer that question.
You know what? It's a perfectly great answer. I mean, like I said, when you're dealing with the brain, you're dealing with, uncharted territories. I mean, even with the advances we have, we're still surprised at what we're finding, every day, every year. On this show especially, every time there's something that comes out that's interesting about psychology, behavioral development, things like that, I try to point it out. I mean, it's just uncharted territories. But so you talk about spectrum, and I understand what you're talking about for the most part, just because you and I have had discussions for years now. But describe for the audience a mild case scenario, and then maybe a more severe case scenario.
Mild would be looking at how the degree to which language is affected. Like, are they able to communicate effectively, have spoken language, have some degree of social relatedness, ability to make friends, flexible thinking, psychological resiliency, and basic self-care skills and all these skills are close to or within 6 to 8 months of their typical developing peers, are what I would consider, and I would say most other people in the field, more of the mild range, even up to moderate. Moderate, you're looking at more running developmentally a year to year and a half to 2 years below what their same age peers are doing, maybe have some language, may use a communication device, not able to really self-regulate their emotions, a lot of interfering behaviors, difficulty being in different settings. And severe, you're looking at, difficult taking into the community, may need, significant help or staffing to function, may not be able to do any self-care skills, limited language, limited ability, very limited leisure skills, may need constant redirection to keep safe from doing unsafe things because they don't have that safety awareness.
Okay. Could there be mild autistic people that you are around at work every day that you're not even aware of?
Oh, sure. There are some people I've come into contact with who will tell me they didn't know. They knew they were different, that I've worked with, or, other people will share with me. They're like, I know there's this person at work, they're a little odd. Do you think that it's possible they have it and they don't know it? I've been asked those kind of questions. But yeah, absolutely. Because at one point, I've been at a high school 20 plus years. You didn't hear a lot about, autism back then, or even know a lot of people that had it. And to think that, potentially there were some people who would be considered, what was considered Asperger's or mildly affected, who had great compensatory skills or skills to work around their deficits. Definitely. One of my former clients' dads, self-diagnosed himself and was a physicist at a research facility in Los Alamos.
Wow.
And was telling me his story and how he figured out he had it and what made him different, and just didn't really know that's what that was called. But once he realizes his child had it, then he realized that, there was something different, and that's how he came to terms with his own identity.
That is interesting. And it really kind of makes sense because, and correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes in milder autistic cases, the person you're dealing with actually has a tendency to excel abnormally at some type of music or something like that. And yet they're still, even though they're functional, they're still, they still have autism.
Yeah, there is a small segment of the population that with an autism diagnosis that can have very specific savant skills. They may not be mild. Sometimes they can be severe, where they can have an eidetic memory and, be able to recite back stuff, see things in pictures, draw things. There are people who have those skills that also can't communicate but can draw amazing pictures. It's a very, very small, significant portion of the population, but the functioning range has absolutely nothing to do with whether that's the savant skill clinically manifests itself. It's just how the brain develops.
To me, this is really interesting stuff because this is what I like to study. Now, we spoke a little bit about the last year and trying to handle cases and some of the things that may have developed. What are the overall changes, or exciting things on the horizon or new types of therapy?
One of the things that is interesting to me as a clinician that's gaining a lot of traction in applied behavior analysis, and has for a few years, but I think is coming to a head now, is accepting commitment therapy. It's used using a lot of the work from John Kabat-Zinn with mindfulness about using deep breathing, being centered, being grounded, being aware of private events, your own thoughts, how they influence your actions, coming up with personal value statements, and are your thoughts bringing you closer or further from kind of the center of where you want to be in your life, how to check in with yourself and to work on improving your psychological resiliency through those check-ins with yourself, and how to do grounding and the ways to diffuse thoughts that may not be getting you to that place by using humor or just different ways of coordinated actions to think about, what has stimulus control over your thoughts. Is it being in a certain environment? Is it having, or lack of biological needs being met? Is it both? And being able to look at that and how that can really help, especially when we're talking about our more mild functioning or mildly affected people, giving them some really good skills that can stand alone that they can use without needing to be so dependent on providers.
Okay, now you're talking my language, because mindfulness meditation is something that right now I'm kind of lax on everything because I've just been distracted chasing squirrels in life, but I'm a big fan of mindfulness meditation. It's gotten me through some very difficult problems in life. It's gotten me through some very high stress and anxiety type. And maybe that's why I'm not practicing it right now, is because, it's like the leaky roof syndrome. Right now I'm under absolutely zero stress, and, I'm just kind of floating through things. But I'm a big fan of mindfulness meditation. I'm no stranger to it at all.
Right.
And I guess I can see the benefits, especially with functioning autistics, but can you make progress trying to step through somebody with moderate autism?
I definitely think it's possible. I think it goes back to what are you measuring? And what I mean by that is they may not understand all the words, but you can definitely do breathing exercises with anybody that can imitate, right?
Right.
You can definitely do muscle relaxation techniques with someone who can imitate as well. So if you can trigger the relaxation parts of your brain by doing the deep breathing, the muscle relaxation, and you can make it so it's tangible and measurable to people who are observing this individual and knows what their anxiety looks like when it manifests itself. Is it a fast heart rate? Is it increased pulse rate? Is it, frequent movement? What are the key indicators that show that this person is, about to have a meltdown? What are the precursor behaviors? And you can implement these techniques and then teach them to ask to do them or take a break. That shows a level of mindfulness that I know many adults who may have more language can't even do. So yeah, I definitely think it's possible.
And it takes a while to actually get into the mindset where you can stop, take some deep breaths, be aware of things that are triggering anxieties, triggering stress, but yet not be involved in them. It takes a little bit, even for a functioning adult or a semi-functioning adult, such as myself, it takes a while to get to that place. Is this something that, is a long-term maybe practice to get mild to moderate autistic cases into just over the years to help them develop that so it becomes second nature to them? How long would something like this take? And I know it's per case, but say maybe for somebody who's moderate.
I would say with work I started with one individual a couple years ago, he was able to request that he needed to take a break, and then he would start doing the deep breathing on his own after a 6-month training period. Say his mom told him he couldn't have his favorite snack. He would say break, and he could only talk in one-word sentences or phrases. He would go on his trampoline, jump, and say, breathe in, out, in, out. And he would do that breathing for probably a good 30 minutes, and he was able to do that himself without us needing to do that for him.
So he was aware that was about to happen. So, man, that's pretty cool. That's interesting. That really is an interesting thing.
It took a lot. I mean, we spent lots of months putting him in, not putting him in, but him being in situations that were triggers, teaching him that he could say it and that demand or that aversive stimulus would be removed, and teach him what to do while he was mildly, because we really interviewed the family and figured out what were the mild, moderate, severe triggers for behaviors when denied access to something he wanted. And if we could curtail it at that mild range before it became a battle, and he became aware that, he could calm himself down, then they would offer him something he could have after he was calm. And that whole cycle echoed into other parts of his life. He would start doing deep breathing on his own without saying break, and you could see him trying to do it when he could feel himself getting kind of wound up.
That's amazing. It really is. Let's go to Autism 101 for a minute here. And for the sake of our listeners, for the sake of people tuning into this show, and I'm going to assume here, just like most other developments, just like most other the things, the earlier you catch the signs of autism, the better.
It's definitely, obviously, yeah, because I would say, like with anything, like if you have a really solidly established learning history or built-in contingencies that access, bigger payouts. So like if you've had somebody for 6 years learn that you throw yourself on the floor, you get out of something or you get access to you want, that's been around a lot longer and is harder. Not harder, it just takes longer to potentially reduce the use of using that tantrum or throwing yourself on the ground, where if you have an 18-month or 2-year-old or 24-month-old, it's not quite, it doesn't have that same learning history, so it usually takes a shorter amount of time to reduce that. So absolutely, a 2-year-old tantrum in a 2-year-old body is a lot easier than in a 14 or 16-year-old body. Exactly.
And as I say, it's easier to reprogram at that stage than when it becomes a really embedded type behavior. That's what I'm kind of assuming there. So for the sake of our audience, what are the signs that maybe your child or somebody, close to you's child may be showing signs of autism? What are the basic giveaways, the clues that something needs to be done? What should they look for?
Some of the things you want to look for is if they've had skills and they begin to lose them. So like if they've had social reciprocity, being able to look, acknowledge sounds in the environment, turn and respond to their name, and all of a sudden they're not doing that anymore. or if they're not doing that at all after, the 6 to 8 month mark, being able to, they've had words and sounds and all of a sudden they don't have it anymore, or if by, 8 to 10 months they're not making sounds or engaging in language and they seem hyper focused on items rather than people. If they're not able to play with toys in functional ways, they may turn cars over and spin the wheels. They may be more interested in the vacuum hose swinging around than actually, potentially vacuuming or showing interest in what their parents doing, that they would rather spend more time alone than connected to other people, that they have some sensory aversion. So like if certain foods, certain textures, the way clothing feels on them, that they're not able to regulate their emotions. They don't have any interest in peers or playing with other kids. Those are some really good early signs that you might want to go take them to the pediatrician and just have a conversation. There's a document or a screener called the MChat that a medical professional or even you can do on your own at home on the computer that gives you a really good, quick, like, is your child doing this or that, or demonstrating any of the stuff that can give you a good idea of how to have that conversation with that medical professional.
That's great. You just answered my next question. It's just like, okay, where do you start? That's a great place to start. And
it's free. It doesn't cost anything. You just type in MCHAT. That's it. And it'll take you right to that screening document.
Okay. MChat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That sounds like something I would use at work. So
that's funny.
Yeah. But, because I work at University of Michigan and everything's Michigan, but no, MChat is easy to remember. And that's a great resource. A lot of people, I know these are really strange times and everything, but being alive in 2021 is absolutely, if you know what you're doing and you know what to look for and you know how to use your resources, that is a great resource because we didn't have that resource, how many years ago?
I think it's been around for, I want to say at least the last 6 to 8 years, maybe even longer, maybe 10. But before then, you're right, there wasn't a simple screener like that was available online that someone could download and quickly do. You'd really have to, do a lot of digging on your own in the internet or go to the doctor, and even back then medical professionals, at least when I started my career, we were giving them education about what was going on. So it's definitely a work in progress.
So, and you can have, I guess, something like Autism Awareness Day, Autism Awareness. These movements, a lot of times, really, I don't think people expect what kind of impact they have outside of just everybody going, oh, autism, yeah, that's a problem. The impact they're having on like the medical community, like you just mentioned, 10 years ago, you never really even had doctors who may have been trained in small towns to recognize autism and know what to do with it.
True. And I was going to say in more rural districts, you still see that that's a struggle. Just even now treating in different parts of the country, depending on where your medical preparation or training came from, there's definitely different styles and ideals of approach, which makes sense. I mean, no one medical school is going to train or teach everybody to treat the same, but it's interesting to see how the symptoms are addressed and how people do that across that. But yeah, definitely there's been a big change over the decade with what services look like and what's going on.
Well, Heather, we're coming down to the bottom of the hour. I appreciate you coming back on the show again. And as usual, you're welcome on the show anytime you want.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're practicing in 3 states now, right?
Yes.
Man, you're just international. And here I am in cornfields of southeastern Michigan. All right. Any other comments you want to make before we say goodbye?
No, we're good. Thank you for letting me be on your show. I hope you have a really great day, and we'll stay in touch.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on. I Do This for Free, Heather. Have a great day. And we'll definitely be staying in touch. I look forward to the next time you're on the show.
Awesome. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
We're going to take a bottom of the hour break. When we come back, the Nerd Fest continues. Don't go anywhere. We're just getting warmed up.
Listen now and don't forget, if you go for that solid jive, you can always keep the dream alive. Palin, palin, palin with Al.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now. 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
Attention business owners and independent contractors. This is a money-saving message from Tax Mediation Services. If your business owes $20,000 or more in taxes, we can help you today, right now. Listen, dealing with the IRS is no picnic. It's an intimidating and extremely stressful process, and you don't want to go it alone. Our attorneys know every law, every tax break, and every possible opportunity to help you resolve and reduce your tax debt. And if you owe more than $20,000, you may be at the top of their hit list. So don't take your tax debt lightly, because it will not go away on its own. The IRS can seize your bank accounts, your home, and even shut down your business. Call our tax experts today at 1-800-783-0810 and let us deal with the IRS while you focus on your business. That's 1-800-783-0810. Again, that's 800-783-0810.
Welcome back to the refreshingly non-political podcast about everything else. I'm your humble host, Alan Ray. It is a beautiful day. We're heading into a beautiful weekend, a beautiful Easter weekend. It's springtime in Michigan. I just love this time of year. It's not my favorite time of year, but I just love this time of year because plants are blooming. I'm looking out Gadsden Studios windows, and all I can see is flowers and green grass. The trees are starting to bud. And of course, it's now time to play America's new favorite game. Is it springtime allergies or is it the Rona? I thought I was alone in this. Apparently I'm not, because I'm just scrolling through things, trying to find content. Sometimes I just find cool, interesting nerd fest type stuff. Other times I just find burner articles like from ABC7Chicago.com, where I'm not alone in playing this game. Dr. Shaw, who's in Chicago, said she's seen an increase in patients with allergy symptoms in the last couple of weeks and understands allergy symptoms may be more of a concern during this pandemic. Itchy eyes, itchy nose, sneezing, runny nose, things like that versus COVID symptoms can involve a lot more nasal congestion. And a big differentiating factor is fevers. That's right from Dr. Shaw. After years of allergy symptoms and having gone through last allergy season during the pandemic, Driscoll has been able to rule out COVID. Amy Driscoll, who basically was interviewed for this article, and she's not alone. I mean, a lot of people right now are playing the guessing game. Dr. Shaw, who piped in on this and said, there's a big difference between the two, urges anyone who is unsure about their symptoms to get tested for COVID. Okay. A good hint, a good throwaway here that might save you some time and effort is get up, take a nice hot shower, wash all of the pollens off of your body, around your face and everything. What else? And take allergy pills. I personally do something that's like a generic Zyrtec every morning during this time of year and during the fall. And if it's getting bad, I also take Flonase. And between those two, everything goes away immediately. And no, it was allergies. It was not the Rona. I'm healthy. I'm ready to go. But the fever is the dead giveaway. If you start running a fever, you start aching, you start feeling down. And if you're unsure, get checked. Go in for the test. But yeah, it's out there. The spring allergies they're rising. The pollen levels are rising. I don't care. I love this time of year. You get outside. You don't have to bundle up so you don't die of hypothermia. You can just walk out the door with a long sleeve shirt or even a short sleeve shirt. It's going to be high 60s, 70s. And you can just go. You don't have to worry about it. I love it. Love it. All right. Back to more brain type stuff. If you've listened to this podcast, you know that I'm kind of big on Alzheimer's disease, exploration of Alzheimer's disease, things that help you mentally, help your brain. And there's been some new research, and this is a breakthrough. This caught my attention. And to me, this is exciting. Might not be to you, but realize it's out there. And this is from sciencemag.com. For years, research to pin down the underlying cause of Alzheimer's disease had been focused on plaque found to be building up in the brain in Alzheimer's patients. But treatments targeted at breaking down that buildup have been ineffective in restoring the cognitive functions, suggesting that the buildup is a side effect and not the actual cause of Alzheimer's disease. Now, setting this aside for a second, when I had my last psychology class, and we talked about this with Heather during the first part of the show, when I left off in the field of psychology, in the several classes that I had, they were saying they were just starting to investigate this plaque buildup and saying, oh, this might be the cause. We might have cracked it. Well, it wasn't. It's a side effect. And a new study team of Brigham Young University researchers finds novel cellular level support for an alternate theory that's growing in strength. Alzheimer's could actually be a result of metabolic dysfunctions in the brain. In other words, there's growing evidence that diet and lifestyle are at the very heart of Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is increasingly being referred to as an insulin resistance of the brain, or type 3 diabetes, said senior study author Benjamin Bickman, a professor of physiology and developmental biology at Brigham Young. Our research shows there is likely a lifestyle origin to the disease, at least to some degree. Now, for the new study published in the academic journal Alzheimer's and Dementia, the BYU research team examined RNA sequences in 240 post-mortem Alzheimer's disease impacted brains. They were looking specifically at the gene expressions of nervous systems, support cells, during two types of metabolism: glucose metabolism, where carbohydrates are broken down to provide energy, and something called catalytic metabolism. Catalytic metabolism involves the brain creating energy from ketones, molecules made in our bodies while the hormone insulin is low and we are burning relatively higher amounts of fat. The popular keto diet is named after the process, since that low-carb, high-protein diet lowers insulin levels and causes the body to burn fat instead of carbs and produces ketones. Now, the researchers found widespread glucose metabolism impairment in those nervous systems support cells of brains of former Alzheimer's disease patients. In other words, it's very much like diabetes. The finding is significant because the brain is like a hybrid engine. The ability to get its fuel from glucose or ketones exists in the brain. But in the Alzheimer's brains that were studied, there appears to be a fundamental genetic deficit in the brain's ability to use the glucose part of it. So it's basically running all on ketones. And in the catalytic metabolism, it's just ignoring half of its fuel. Now, Bickman's also quoted saying, "We've turned the hybrid engine of our brains into a monofuel system that just fails to thrive." And so the brain, which is progressively becoming deficient in its ability to use glucose, is now crying out for help. It's starving in the midst of plenty. The body is swimming in a sea of glucose, but the brain just can't use it. So in short, what it's saying is that these guys have kind of cracked the code that Alzheimer's, you have to start preparing now to defend yourself from Alzheimer's disease. It is a form of diabetes, relatively. Really honestly, it's just another argument to stay healthy, to eat right, and to do everything in your power to avoid, and it's no secret, diabetes is running rampant, especially in third world or in first world countries and in countries that, in Western civilizations that kind of, they eat a lot of processed foods. They eat a lot. Junk food, sugary foods, candies, things like that are just so common. And we don't even think about a lot of times what we're putting in our mouth. And, what goes in, it's just like a computer. Your input equals your output. So it really encourages me to actually eat even better than what I already am. Okay, I'm not even going to lie to you. I have a well-balanced diet. I am about 50% health food, 50% junk food. I'm not even kidding you. There's times where, I eat my leafy green vegetables every day. My salad every day. I'll eat, if given the choice, I'll have a small chicken breast and rice and things like that are healthy for you, good for you. Man, you lay that pizza out in front of me, I'm going to lay into that sucker like it owes me money. That's just a fact. I love my pizza. I love steaks. I love, all of the food that's not good for you. I love them. But I do also understand that there's consequences to eating things like this on a continual basis. So the thinking behind all of this is logically that, and I've said this over and over and over again, in your struggle, and we're seeing even more and more reasons to stay fit, stay healthy, stay exercised, keep your weight down. This COVID-19, I've been doing all kinds, and I hate to have to sit here and talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it just a little bit here. Just like what's happening with your brain here, your lifestyle up to this point, it's starting to become very, very clear that how you've lived all the way up to this point may impact how your body reacts to the COVID pandemic. I've been reading researchers where a lot of, in fact, the lion's share, the majority of people who have died with COVID-19 in their system are obese or overweight to a certain point, unhealthy. A lot of times they can't help it. They have pre-existing conditions. A lot of those pre-existing conditions come from unhealthy lifestyles. So start now. Start now. You know, that's the beauty of exercise, eating right, doing things. You can make up for your mistake. You can't cure it. Of course, you know, you're going to pay the piper for things you've done all your life, but you can reduce risks, reduce problems by starting now to eat right, exercise, get out there and walk. You know, you don't have to be a marathon runner. You don't have to be a weightlifter. Getting out there and walking, grabbing a couple of cheap pair of dumbbells and doing some exercise, resistance exercising while you're walking or before or after, it all matters. If you have to have that steak, do it once a week. If you have to have that double cheeseburger, do it once a month, you know, but most of the time, 90% of the time, eat right, exercise, you know, cheat days. It makes cheat days sweeter in my world, you know, and when you're out there and you're living good, you're exercising, you're doing what you're supposed to do. And then you set a day and go, okay, this day I'm cheating. I'm doing the thing. Well, there you go. Yeah, it all adds up. And we're starting to see more and more evidence that living more good than bad with your exercise and eating, it's getting more and more relevant when you get older or when we get pandemics and things like that. All right, moving on to the Nerd Fest. This was really interesting. This is for all you space nerds and people who keep your eyes on the skies. There's a scientist that thinks he finally knows why people hear sounds coming from the northern lights. Now, this has been a phenomenon for quite some time. For hundreds of years, people have reported hearing sizzling, cracking, or whooshing sounds, and especially from the indigenous people living in the Arctic, but also from non-indigenous people living in Canada, Finland, and northern countries. And a belief among some groups of Canadian First Nations is that the aurora consists of the spirits of their ancestors and the noises they're singing. However, there's never been a whole lot of science behind what they're hearing. Now, this is according to goodnewsnetwork.org. Just as there's a line of reasoning among people who look for species presumed extinct, that if so many people are reporting sightings, there must be something there. One scientist figures that for years, people have described sounds coming from the aurora, so it's at least worth exploring the possibilities. A professor in acoustics at Finland's Aalto University, who himself heard slight sounds while watching the northern lights in remote Lapland, looked at the mountain of anecdotal reports and sought to construct a hypothesis that might explain them. He came up with the idea in 2016 that the sounds were electrical discharges resulting from a temperature inversion, which happens when cool air, rather than floating above the earth, clings to the ground. And when warm air, which normally radiates near the level of dirt, rises to cover the cold air at altitudes around 60 to 400 meters, a reversal of their normal positions. When this warm air rises, it carries negatively charged electrons with it to the bottom of the inversion. The field of static electrical potential expands upward towards the sky and downward towards the earth. And as the northern lights bombard the magnetosphere with positively charged electrons, they coalesce at the top of the inversion. Now, this Professor Lane, puts in his journal, he says, I tested it with 2 hours of material I recorded in Fiskars in 2013. The model fitted the hypothesis beautifully and at the time gave the height of the inversion layer more precisely at 78 to 80 meters. This would at least explain why the sounds are described as sizzling, bubbles popping, and things like that, as well as why plenty of people never hear anything when standing under the aurora. Since there's no temperature inversion, the electrical conditions would be absent. The data was gathered by Lane over nearly 2 decades with a setup of 3 microphones recorded over certain periods, but now his research has inspired a new citizen project at the Hankasalami Observatory in Finland that will record potential aurora sounds 24 hours a day with 4 microphones. So this guy has actually started something here. It says, we are trying to hear the same sounds with 3 or 4 microphones located a few meters apart, said Arto Oksanen, the observatory's president. By measuring time delay in each recording, it is possible to calculate the 3-dimensional position of the sound source, or at least the direction to the sound source. This would allow researchers to place a distance on the genesis of the sound, and to a large part would help prove or disprove Lane's theory. We'll be sure to keep you updated on the eventual findings of this intriguing project. Cool things going on out there while everybody else is hunkered down. So I don't know if you've ever seen the Northern Lights, Aurora Borealis. I have a few times. Every once in a while it gets really crazy, really wild. And if you look to the north, even here in Michigan, the whole sky is green and white and just dancing. It's one of the most beautiful sights you've ever seen. You get up in the Upper Peninsula and see it, it's even more vivid. It's just crazy. You can't miss it. It's one of those deals that, I'll tell you what, once you experience it, you'll never be the same again. You'll always have that. You know, I think we've just about run our course here today. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining me. It's Easter weekend. I know times are hard. I know you may or may not be able to meet with family. There are churches and congregations who are limiting their seating. Most places are. And a lot of times you have to schedule ahead if you're going to go. If you're going, great. If you are at home, remember, you're still worshiping. It's fine. So if you can get out, good. If you can't, well, be safe no matter what you do. Also, World Autism Awareness Day. Light it up blue today, people. Learn, understand. And as you heard from the interview today with Heather, you may be working with somebody mildly autistic and not even know it. They might not even know it. Mental disorders are, and as we go along with science, with the field of psychology, the field of physiology, we understand more and more about how the brain works. We understand that some people just have certain issues that can be overcome through therapy. Some of them can't. An understanding of mental conditions and accepting the people and understanding how they function is key. I could go on with stories of my own personal life and how I've actually come across a few of these people and had them work for me. And by treating them human, by treating them as normal people, it's the best therapy in the world because they're accepted. I'm going to get on out of here. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the weather. Stay safe. Remember, we are smack dab in the middle of tornado season. This is the time of year, Palm Sunday, the anniversary of the 1965 Palm Sunday tornadoes in this area was last week. And it was devastating. Pay attention to what's going on in the weather. Get yourself a NOAA weather radio. You know, every minute counts. They just did a major update to the NOAA weather forecasting system. And it's going to give you even more of a heads up when inclement weather hits you and you need to be taking cover. Pay attention to that stuff. God bless you. God bless America. We will talk again soon.
Had to be like this.